In this video, we're going to try something a little different, and I'm going to test out two methods for chroming out your Terminator. I've laid out all the stuff I used ahead in front of me. As you can see, I've gone ahead and prepared the model with a glossy black coat. To sand off all the layer lines, I used 120 grit sandpaper, and then in the finishing stage, I used 320. To prime it, I used Rust-Oleum filler primer, and to fill in all the gaps, I used a Bondo spot putty filler. The blue tape was used to block off the red eyes, and a sharp tool was used to clean out all the lines between. Remember to use protective equipment, including a mask and gloves, while you're doing this. A rag is always useful to have around to wipe free the dust from the model before you apply any next layers. The final coat I used a Rust-Oleum glossy black. 3 coats in all to give it that smooth shine. Today we're going to test out graphite powder and aluminum powder. Both could be found on Amazon, fairly cheap, under $20. Use caution when applying these powders. They coat everything they get on, so I suggest you make a simple applicator. To do this, I used a popsicle stick and a small piece of sponge from a larger one I used for washing cars. It has smaller holes and feels less abrasive. I cut out a small piece, half an inch thick, inch long maybe, by another half an inch wide, and hot glued it to the popsicle stick. After you apply the powder, you're going to have to buff it out. For this, I simply used some cotton balls that I pulled and fluffed up a little bit in order to make them a little bit lighter, hoping they wouldn't scratch up the paint job too much. So, with all the tools ready, let's get started. First, we're going to start with the aluminum powder. It didn't actually come in the Ziploc bag. The bag that's inside of it is the one that it came in, but I put it in there to try and minimize the amount that actually plumes into the air. I dab the applicator in there and then try and tap some off before applying some to the model. Just tap a little bit off the sponge and start rubbing it in. Didn't seem to really scratch up too much. Almost right away it has a bit of a metal effect to it, but nothing very chromy or shiny. Take your time and get into all the nooks and crannies. And this portion here is actually sped up 5 times. I didn't think you need to sit through it all, but it looks like I'm just smearing it around. But you can already tell as the model moves, it is starting to pick up a bit of a shine. You'll notice that I only did half of the skull in the aluminum. The other half I'm going to use the graphite on. That way, same paint job, same finish all around, and we can actually get a decent idea of how each one turns out on the black. I wouldn't mind doing this again on a glossy white base coat to see how that turns out. When you're finished, go ahead and clean up your area. As you notice, I knocked off all the extra powder off the applicator and tried to get as much air out the bag as possible. I used next to none of that bag on this, very minimal. But now it's time to actually start polishing. So I take one of the cotton wads and just begin small circular movements, not applying too much pressure. Make sure to try and either tap out or blow out any of the excess powder inside the eye sockets, and once again in all the little holes and nooks and crannies. And just go over the whole model and polish. Occasionally you have to go to a different spot on the cotton ball because the excess aluminum powder does build up in it, and you just kind of want a clean spot. I might try looking for some actual buffing pads next time I do this. I simply use cotton balls, and I did notice in the final finish there was a little bit of scratching. I may have been able to actually apply more powder and try buffing it in with something smoother. It might work just fine. Here it is after a few minutes of buffing. As I bring it to the camera, you notice it's got a very nice chrome-like finish to it. And you can see a bit of those scratch marks in it. You can see me wave. All in all, I do like the way that the aluminum turns out. Next up is the graphite powder. This container actually arrived yesterday. I had the aluminum powder sitting around, don't ask. And while I was waiting for this one, I did some small test samples on the aluminum powder and was pretty surprised at how it worked out. I tried some different clear coats, but I couldn't find one that didn't just completely destroy the finish. They all milked over and looked awful. So if I find something, I'll probably make a video on that. For now, the graphite powder goes on pretty smooth, the exact same process as before. I do the other side of the skull. Almost immediately while I'm doing it, I notice that it shines up to a mirror polish almost right away just with a sponge. I may have under-applied just because of that. But I don't know, I'm thinking about trying to go over again maybe and see if a second coat actually makes it even shinier. Here on camera, it looks great. I can't say that the finish altogether doesn't look great. I found this method from Googling online trying to find a way of chroming. I've never been happy with the way that the metal paint looks out of a spray can. And a lot of the people making Mandalorian armor use the graphite method for that Beskar look. But like I said, I had the aluminum powder sitting around, so I figured why not try it. All done, I clean up real quick. And buff it out, just like the other side. As I move closer to the camera, you can see right away just how shiny it is. The aluminum almost seems to have like a milkiness to it, but up close it's definitely not like a white. It's I don't even know how to describe it. On the graphite side, a lot of the layer lines and the imperfections definitely show through a lot better. It does seem to have a bit of a darkness to it. I mean, I think it's that glossy black paint, but super reflective. Turns out really well. Take a pad to try and buff out that center line. It seems to be a little distracting, but it doesn't come out. It just kind of is what it is at this point. The step in front of the light, the green screen goes nuts. But the reflection, you can't argue. It's, for as cheap as this method is, I think it works really well. And it's far better than the rattle cans, like I said. There we go. Thumbs up. I'm happy. As I set it down, the graphite powder was used on the left side of your screen. The aluminum powder on the right side of your screen. Both look great. But definitely the graphite's a little bit darker. But I don't know. I guess it's really up to you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot for watching it. I hope you have a good one.